plan that I gave this year was one that was fundamentally a listening exercise.
Trudeau's done it again. Welcome back to Moose on Loose. My name's David, and today's top stories. We've got a podcast here coming from the reporter from Blacklocks. It's very interesting. They talk about immigration, as Mark Miller has made some of the biggest bonehead comments of the year. In our top story, though, we've got a tax on a tax. That's right. Justin Trudeau's found a way to put a tax on the carbon tax rebate. That's right. Diving into this, we've got a video here that's got Brian Lilly talks about this. This is basically the carbon tax rebate that businesses get. You got to pay tax on that.
Brian, the Trudeau government is taxing a tax rebate, and this has the Canadian Federation of Independent Business furious with the decision. So what can you tell us about this?
So this was supposed to be like the carbon tax rebate that we all get, that was 4 times a year. The government's always telling you, check your bank account. Yeah. So small business was promised that they would get something similar to what the consumer carbon tax rebate is. And then they waited. And you had groups like the CFIB out there fighting for it and saying, hey, look, this is hurting small business. You promised that you would do something. You need to do it. They're finally getting it. But now they've been informed by the government that it's going to be considered a government benefit and therefore taxable. As the CFIB said, Dan Kelly put it, that's like taxing your tax rebate. You get your income tax rebate after you file your taxes, and they say, oh, but we've got to tax that now. Or it's exactly like saying, oh, the carbon tax is taxable income. Give us back your share. It makes 0 sense. And by the sounds of it, it may have the Canada Revenue Agency and the Department of Finance on opposite sides, and one not knowing what the other is doing because they both put out different scenarios on this. However, the finance department is the one that is going to end up calling the shots. So a big push on the Trudeau government now to reverse this insane decision.
Mm-hmm. That's absolutely stupid. Just imagine, say a business makes $1,000 and they have to pay $100 in tax. Then Trudeau comes riding out on his horse like he's the white knight, gives you back $80. But then you got to pay extra tax on that $80. You're giving them an extra $10 back on that. So now you're down to $70. They never fail to just amaze us with their stupidity. Like they can't go 24 hours without doing something stupid. I know this because I find something every day.
Of 0 cents, like you said there, Brian. Okay, switching gears here, the Union for Canada Post has issued its 72-hour strike notice, meaning Canada Post workers could walk off the job by this weekend. So, Brian, will the Trudeau government move to stop that strike before it happens? So what do you think?
Likely not. That's not how they operate. I mean, hopefully the Labour Minister is in there and doing his best to put pressure on both sides, to work with a mediator to avoid a strike. They've been negotiating for a year and they haven't been able to come to an agreement. This strike makes 0 sense to me. Canada Post is a money-losing operation. It's losing business year after year. The workers are not in a good position to make huge demands on them because any demands they make are essentially going to be on us. And people are using Canada Post less and less.
This is amazing. We've got the port strikes, which has just been cleared out, and now we've got Canada Post. It's just something every day here in Canada. Next up, we got this one, Doug Ford. He is absolutely ripping into Mexico, saying it's not fair. What you basically have are tariffs from the Americans on the Chinese products, but Chinese products are just getting shipped to Mexico and then brought up into America now because Mexico has a free trade agreement with the United States.
You look at Mexico, they're importing cheap products, undercutting our hardworking men and women, not only here, but in the U.S. from China. They're slapping a Made in Mexico sticker on and shipping it up and taking our hardworking men and women jobs away from them. Unacceptable. So we're doing, Ontario alone does $500 billion. Mexico, we do $40 billion. And guess what? They import 36.5 billion into our country. So they export 36.5 out of 40, and we export 2.5 billion. It's ridiculous. And they're undercutting the market. So what I'm proposing to the federal government, we do a bilateral trade deal with the U.S. And if Mexico wants a bilateral trade deal with Canada, God bless them. But I'm not going to be drawn down with these cheap imports taking men and women's jobs from hardworking Ontarians.
He got an applause back here. Foreign goods are slipping past trade laws that easily. Who's really watching our borders, Canada's economy or someone else's game? Trudeau long sold out Canada. You bet he did. Who's making money on that deal? If it wasn't for Chinese and Mexican products coming into Canada, Canadians would be even worse shape. What I got for you next here, coming from Blacklock's reporter, it says, who was in the room? Liberals and New Democrats. It looked like a secret meeting to cut up the cash. So we got a podcast here. It says, at Elections Canada, chief to testify on proposal guaranteeing pension eligibility for 28 NDP and Liberal MPs.
And of course, it's that time you love when we talk with our friend Tom Korski over at Blacklock's reporter. Good morning, Tom.
Morning, Alex.
Who are you talking to? Any secret meetings you're having with Elections Canada we should talk about?
Secret what?
Oh, I'm just saying. I'm just saying. No, let's set this up because I've been wanting to know about this because this has been out for a couple of weeks now. You guys put this out where this meeting happens between the NDP. We get this meeting between the NDP and the Liberal like last January, and then apparently Bloc Conservatives not invited, but Elections Canada was.
Big problem, and the chief electoral officer is going to be has agreed as if he had a choice, but he has agreed to take questions about this at House Affairs Committee. What happened? Well, the chief electoral officer is like the chief of police for elections. So imagine if the chief of police just had confidential closed-door meetings about policing with just a couple of people that he kind of liked, but not the other people. You can imagine that it doesn't work that way. You are a chief electoral officer for the people of Canada, not your buddies in Ottawa. But the chief electoral officer showed up for this meeting last January at a cabinet minister's office on Parliament Hill, and they discussed confidential revisions to the Elections Act. And you'll never guess that one of the revisions was to benefit Liberal and New Democrat MPs who would not otherwise qualify for a parliamentary pension worth $78,000 a year. And you'll never guess who was in the room. Liberals and New Democrats. Well, that worked out nicely.
Yeah.
And it did look like a secret meeting to cut up the cash, lots of questions. And as you know, the opposition for years has had suspicions that Elections Canada is not the square dealer they say they are in their advertising. It's going to be interesting.
Something to note about this, just a couple of videos ago, I had a committee meeting video on this where the Conservatives absolutely destroy the NDP and the Liberals on this. They had their little secret meeting. Interesting hearing it from the Blacklock's reporter here. This just gets better and better as this goes on.
What day is that? Because that is a popcorn moment. Because again, what were you talking about? And is it going to prevent us from going to an election in this little deal making? I mean, the taxpayers do want to know.
Interestingly, they are getting nothing but grief about this. And my 2 cents, I think the clause to reward the 28 Liberal New Democrat MPs ineligible for pensions will be cut out of that bill. They will not get the guaranteed pension. They will only get grief. No schedule for the meeting yet, Alex. No. They're on Remembrance Day.
Of course. Oh, still. Do they get the extra day?
And there's only 4 weeks left before it's Christmas on the House calendar. So time is short.
Yes, of course. Nonetheless, we'll stay tuned to that. And then you got the investigators confirming what we already know of these whistleblowers, that the public funds are for anyone to take, anyone to steal, anyone to get a sweetheart gig off of. And in the case of Defense Minister Bill Blair's department, well, the documents obtained by those doing the audit show that they deal. I guess they all have good friends in good places, right? And there's been all these programs that have been the public funds have been used like a,
No, you're raising an interesting point. You're raising an interesting point. This one specifically was a sleazy contract in the Department of National Defense, and it involved a base commander not identified, the base not identified, the sum involved not disclosed, but the fact is, according to the audit, and a finding of wrongdoing, that there was a base commander who awarded a contract to a beer buddy. No rules complied with. I mean, this is the military where they're used to taking orders. No, he decided to just kind of wing this, and he was going to start awarding contracts to buddies. And you were going to pay for it, and you were going to like it.
I mean, Trudeau's been doing this for years. I mean, look at all the stuff we got going on in the government here. It's only a matter of time for all this stuff to come out. Where have they been hiding all this? The $8 million barn?
You used a key word here, Alex, whistleblower. This only came to light because of a whistleblower. ArriveCan only came to light because of whistleblower. Sustainable Development Technology Canada, what MPs have dubbed the famous Green Slush Fund, 186 conflicts of interest, whistleblower. 8 years ago, the Commons Government Operations Committee had a fascinating report that was buried in the woods, and it said we ought to have tougher whistleblower protections because they're the ones who are acting for the benefit of taxpayers. It's getting to the point in the bureaucracies that whistleblowers are the only friends that taxpayers have anymore.
No. That's really true. We should have protective laws for whistleblowers. It's unbelievable that they're the ones that we're relying on for the truth, what's going on in the government today. Like, that's just unbelievable if you think about it.
And you'll never guess what report never saw the light of day again with Cabinet. They are not interested, Alex.
I bet they're not. But the thing is, it's really not up to them. Maybe the other Randy, the mysterious Randy, can tell us. Maybe he knows it.
That's just so sad. The Employment Minister Randy Boissonnault busted for maintaining business ties while a member of Cabinet. An absolutely clear conflict.
What's worse, being a pretendian or like?
And he comes up with this cockamamie story about, no, there was another guy named Randy. It wasn't me. How am I supposed to know? I never made any calls. Oh, you mean that call? This is a cabinet minister in a G7 country. You wouldn't put up with that at county school board. They can pick them, Alex.
Well, but there's no punishment, right? Like you're the government of reconciliation. You pretended to be a native and then you're accused of taking money.
No, the word on the street in Minister Boissonnault's riding in Edmonton is that he will not be a minister much longer.
Oh, well, okay.
I have the proof of that here. We can see here, Edmonton Centre. This is Randy Boissonnault's riding, and Conservative likely. At the very least, it's going to be taken by the NDP if they somehow get a big surge here. It's not going to be by the Liberals. So Randy Boissonnault is done. Are we really surprised, though? I mean, the guy is just fleecing us. He should be in jail. Like, I don't know why he wouldn't be put into jail until he's proven his innocence, because everything's just pointing to guilty.
Why wait? Right. What's the holdup, right?
Well, pension.
Yeah, okay. I was sorry. Well, he's been there for a long time. He's been in politics for a long time.
Sure. Yeah. No, he's got his 6 years, but your payment as a retired parliamentarian is years of service times peak earnings. So you can keep every dollar counts. Tough times, Alex.
Yes,
every dollar counts for Randy Boissonnault.
That's where, like, Jagmeet's pension, well, it's worth $2.3 million. That's extended out over the lifetime. I believe it's like $36,000 a year. But if you get more years under your belt, that pension gets pumped up. It's stupid that politicians get a full pension at just 6 years of service. Why? Why don't they have equal laws that they have to work just as long as all the rest of us to get a pension? I don't have a pension. I got nothing. For a lot of people who pay into those pensions, that rule should be the same for them as it is for a politician.
Hey, let's talk numbers, because now immigration is all the talk, right? Immigration's all the talk. 200,000 fewer foreign students got into this country compared to last year, and that is according to the Immigration Department. They're not going to say how many existing, foreign study permits remain. Like, they don't know. They won't tell us like who's left. I don't even know if anyone's left.
Yeah, the numbers are phenomenal. Testifying in the Immigration Committee, that's exactly right. There was a Director General said 200,000 fewer foreign students. We've done it. High five. And MP Kana from Oxford, Ontario said, great. So how many foreign students do we have now? That's new permits issued, new study permits. How many do we have in Canada now? She said, Director General Bronwyn May, I left that number back at the office. I don't have that number. People are astonished to learn, and I was astonished the first time I encountered it in a report. There were more than 1 million foreign students in Canada last year. 1 million foreign students.
That's how you get to that 1.6 number. You basically have 1 million students, 500,000 immigrants, and then the extra hundreds or so thousand temporary foreign workers. That's how they get to the 1.6. By cutting the student numbers down a bit, there's still a ton.
This was your immigration program, Alex. There were people, only suckers, were queuing up, filling out forms in triplicate to become landed immigrants. The quick, short way was to take a cake decorating course at Conestoga College, drop out after 6 months, and claim refugee status. It happened.
Yeah.
It's happened tens of hundreds of thousands of times.
Disgraceful.
More than 1 million. And they won't answer the question, how many are left? Immigration has been a great success story.
Well, yeah, but if you haven't noticed, I mean, Mark Miller out there this morning all the language around immigration's changing. They U-turned it to ease it, instead of like admitting they completely screwed it up, and now saying, the reality is that not everyone's welcome. So they clearly are hearing the message of Trump, but there's the kind of language they're using now, Tom, is the kind of language that would get you, canceled, called racist, right?
Times changed. Unfortunately, it was too late.
So let's just listen to that. I've got it here. So this is what Mark Miller said today.
Canadians want a managed, controlled flow of migration, and it's important that we do that. We've seen things change as quickly as over the last year, and it's important for us to listen to Canadians. And this plan that I gave this year was one that was fundamentally a listening exercise to Canadians.
Is this change an admission by the federal government that what's been going on over the past few years hasn't worked? That we've been oversubscribed essentially?
Well, I think it is worth examining what has worked and what hasn't worked. We do have our share of responsibility federally. Immigration is a shared jurisdiction, and we own a lot of the increase that I think was important.
It's not shared, man. It's all you. You and Sean Fraser, the two of you guys get to decide that. Sean Fraser before, now it's you. Daniel Smith doesn't get to come in the building and start dictating how many people you guys are bringing in. Like, what is this?
Important to prevent the economy from going into the recession and the growth that we've had, which has almost entirely been due to immigration. That's come with what the Bank of Canada has said is a conundrum, what economists have said is a conundrum on services, on the ability of provinces to adapt. And so it is a collective effort by the federal government, by provinces, in this case BC, and by municipalities to adapt to larger numbers. And so that listening exercise over the last year has been significant, and I think it was clear to me that it was important to reduce not only temporary residents, international students, like we've been doing over the last year, but also on the permanent levels to make them more manageable. And I think that...
Is this guy for real? Listening exercise for a year? This guy's a bonehead. The only conundrum is, how did someone so corrupt and evil get into our government at such a high and important position?
Yes, it is absolutely our responsibility as the federal government.
This has led to Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre accusing the Prime Minister and your party of flip-flopping here, making a last-minute policy reversal to, I suppose, bring policy more in line with what the Conservatives have proposed. How much influence did the reaction of opposition parties have on this new policy?
Well, I listen, frankly, to all Canadians. That includes criticism that I receive, whether it's from the NDP, the Bloc, or the Conservatives. Pierre Poilievre.
That's hilarious. You guys don't listen to anything. You're like, just like Trudeau, you silver spoon losers who don't know how to take criticism. And you guys have proven that. Every time this guy gets criticized, he absolutely pops his top and just throws a tantrum and has a meltdown in public. It's embarrassing.
It has been singularly irresponsible in his approach to immigration, saying that there's been this uncontroversial approach to immigration, consensus to immigration over the last 150 years. We know that that's not entirely true, whether it's the Chinese head tax, whether it's racial policies that went up to the 60s. He'll just make things up. And the only thing he's come up with is saying, well, math will solve it. Well, we haven't seen, if he wants an election tomorrow, we would have to see his plan. This is our plan. I think it's responsible. And if what he's saying is a tacit endorsement of what we're doing, so be it. But I think this is fundamentally a listening exercise that goes over the course of a year. It's been intense over the last 3 months, and I think presents Canada's best foot. Is it ideal? It's not ideal in a non-ideal world. It is the best plan we have in a very difficult world.
Yeah, you guys are idiots. That's the problem. You're absolute idiots. Math does solve this. All you have to do is quite literally do the math on how many houses we build, how many doctors we have, what our infrastructure can support, and how many immigrants can then, through a math formula, come into the country. You do the same thing with temporary foreign workers. You do the same thing for students. You got a math formula. You could get one of those nerds in the government to do it for you, but you guys clearly have an agenda to make real estate very expensive in Canada.
Poilievre, though, has said that previously that immigration numbers under a Conservative government would be much lower if he were to become Prime Minister. And he says that especially for numbers of for temporary migrants, is this plan, are you borrowing policy from the Conservatives ahead of an election here?
I think we did what was right for Canadians, Stephen. The levels that were presented are still unbid.
How is that good for Canadians that the prices have gone through the moon? What is he saying?
Just they represent levels that we had roughly in 2021. What I hear from Pierre Poilievre is a lot of flip-flopping on his side, pandering. I saw him pandering on YouTube to a number of students with the Member of Parliament from Edmonton, Millwood, saying that if they're here and they're students, they'll all get jobs and be able to stay. Yet in different public fora, he says he's going to cut. I haven't seen any numbers on his part. If he's going to be credible to Canadians, he's actually going to come up with a plan, and I haven't seen that.
This guy's saying it's what's best for Canada, quite literally pushing thousands, tens of thousands of people into tents on the street. That's what's best for Canada. Guess what? That's what they want. They want suffering in Canada. Miller is lying as usual. He's such a POS. Miller doesn't know what he's talking about. So Poilievre is the one that's irresponsible despite having no say in the matter, while Mark Miller is the minister in charge. Typical Liberal gaslighting. Anything that was wrong with the country is at the fault of the Liberal NDP coalition. This guy's a moron. He only has his job because he's buddies with the corrupt PM. There it is. Comment of the day. It's quite clear the primary reason is because they wanted to jack real estate prices. I've been digging into Justin Trudeau's real estate development company. We'll get into that after. Let's finish off the podcast.
We all know immigration was a concept to cabinet because they thought that they needed more taxpayers to cover their deficits. And their own research showed that immigrants take years to assimilate into the labor force and to become tax-paying, working members of society. And in the short run, all they do is drive up the rents. I'm not getting this off the internet. That's Bank of Canada research. Literally, all Minister Miller had to do was call the Bank of Canada and say, do you have any data on the immigration experience?
Yeah, they didn't.
Yes, sir, we sure do. Not interested.
Yeah, isn't that amazing that you can make such a massive policy and you just don't even...
It was just a hunch.
Don't even care about getting data.
It was all guesswork. It's disappointing because these are the follow the science guys.
Yeah, disappointing. I mean, honestly,
It's not guesswork. They knew what they're doing. They wanted to increase the real estate prices.
You wanted to build your legacy on immigration, and you screwed that up. And then you wanted to do it on reconciliation, and then Randy and his pretend native cousin Randy screwed that up. It is confounding, and yet no one calls them on it.
Legacy, no problem. No, they have a legacy. No problem, Alex. They have some legacy. Yeah. And how, you might say.
And how? All right. Well, stay tuned on that. What are you watching for today? Is there anything? Are they doing anything this week?
We are watching this growing filibuster now in week 6.
Yeah, that's the other thing that no one talks about is that they're not doing anything because the government is refusing to hand over, documents of the slush fund. They don't want this information out. That's why nothing's getting done.
Complete House gridlock, and it starts to bite them in the pants now because Cabinet wants to raise the capital gains. They need that $18 billion, and they're not going to get it.
Well, what about the little port strike?
Complete gridlock, Alex. Nothing is happening, and it is inconceivable that this will go on much longer.
So they did solve that with binding arbitration today, or yesterday. Moving over to Justin Trudeau's real estate development company, we've got it here. So I was able to, through numerous different ways, actually use AI to help me search a bit for it. AI actually taught me where to search to find certain things. So this is his business number in Quebec. Here's the name of the company. It's a numbered company. You can see Alexander Trudeau. So he's the first shareholder. So it's both Trudeau and his brother in here. You can see right here. So first shareholder gets the majority. Alexander Trudeau, Justin Pierre Trudeau, and then Roy L. Heeman in their capacity as trustees of the Pierre Elliott Trudeau Testamentary Fund. So if we look, I looked up this guy here, and this guy I think is just managing the money. It's a lawyer, this guy, Roy Heenan. If you look here, yeah, I see he's a lawyer. We look at the home address here, which I did look up. It's this one here. So it's this building here. I think this is a business address that Alexander Trudeau has listed. I don't know. I don't think he lives there, but if we look here, it says production of sale of firewood and timber. It says real estate development right there. It has the activity codes here. Operations of residential buildings and housing. And we look at the dates here. He's having to update this every year. Being a corporation in Canada, you have to do an annual report where you have to update the directors and any changes to the personnel, etc. It's like a $55 form. You just fill it out, send it over every year, which we can see at the bottom here. So you can see they file this every single year. But if we look when it was registered as 2007, Pierre Elliott Trudeau died in 2000 in September. So this was created 7 years after the death of Pierre Elliott Trudeau. So I don't know if they're moving assets around or what Trudeau and his brother are doing here. It says joint stock company or company 2007. Some other information here. There's not really a lot here aside from the name, some of the numbers, some of the dates. Unfortunately, this is all we have. This is basically this website has given us this information, which is a little bit more than we had before, as well as some of the addresses. If you scroll down here, it shows the voting rights. So here's Justin Trudeau's brother. He's listed first, and then Trudeau's underneath here, 25 to 50% as well. And it has their addresses, Trudeau's business address, 80 Wellington, which is obviously the government here. So that's basically all I know about Trudeau's real estate development company, but it is right here in black and white, real estate development. So who knows what he has there? I'll leave a link in the description down below if you guys want to poke around with this stuff and start looking around. We need to figure out what exactly this is. How much land does the guy own? Because this really tells us everything about why he's made these immigration decisions. Here, jumping over to my group, let's check out what memes we've got today. Ontario school played Palestinian protest song in Arabic as its Remembrance Day music. So this is linking to the National Post. I haven't verified this, but I'm assuming that's correct if it's linking to the National Post. That is disgraceful. Maybe we should stop asking why food is so expensive and start asking why corporate grocery store profits are at record highs. Maybe we should axe the carbon tax and see immediately what happens afterwards. It will happen once Pierre gets in here. So I don't know what this is here. It says cannot call PM a terror lord. MPs may not call Prime Minister Justin Trudeau a terror lord. I find I can say that and I'm fine. You can see the word right there. Even if the word appears in the constituency mail being read aloud in the House of Commons, the Speaker has ruled. Reciting letters with rough language has no excuse for breaching decorum. MPs were told, we will not tolerate these types of comments. Fergus has got to go, man. This guy's highly corrupt, partisan, and just an absolute loser. Masculinity is not for women to define. Why is the immigration system failing? They broke it. Yeah, no kidding. I'll speak slow so you understand. You shouldn't even run a lemonade stand. You just know Trudeau would be sitting there like, Highly suspicious. Conservatives NDP demand Liberal minister explain Indigenous claims. This guy is just the bottom of the barrel, just filthy rat, just like Trudeau. Quite the statements made by Mark Miller saying they've done this immigration, these increases for Canadians, for the benefit of the Canadian people. Somehow, I think those words are going to come back to bite him in the butt. That does it for this one. If you guys want to check out my hiking channel, which all that mountain footage comes from, I'll link it up here. I just dropped a new video. I'll see you guys on the next one.